The Jack Welch Management Institute at Strayer University helps you go from, I know the way, to I've arrived with our top 10 ranked online MBA. Gain skills you can learn today and apply tomorrow. Get ready to go from make it happen to made it happen and keep striving. Visit strayer.edu/Jack Welch MBA to learn more. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
Una silla de masajes puede parecer extravagante. 8 configuraciones diferentes, intensidad ajustable, además es calefaccionado. Y se siente tan bien. Sí, una silla de masajes puede parecer extravagante. Y 2, bueno, aún más. Pero cuando esas sillas de masajes vienen con un auto, se vuelven bastante prácticas. El nuevo Volkswagen Tiguan 2025 con funciones premium como los asientos delanteros con masaje disponibles. Solo parece extravagante.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to talk about when your defensiveness stops sex in its tracks, which I think was a commercial about cockroaches. I mean, wasn't there like a spray that stops bugs in their tracks? Or, I don't know. I mean, that's just what I thought, but I could not find it. Wait, maybe I'll find it now. I didn't look too hard. No, I could not find it again. So if anybody knows what I'm talking about, you can certainly, I would appreciate you commenting with it on the Spotify comments so that I remember what I'm talking about for the commercial. But anywho, defensiveness really kills women's sex drives. And this is a common complaint in couples counseling. And really, it is true that there is very little that is more frustrating or less appealing than somebody who cannot admit fault, because that sort of person is a liar. They're not being honest. And I will get into the depths of this discussion as soon as I tell you to subscribe. There's over 200 episodes, subscriber episodes, and, of course, oral sex on women, which is always the one that I trot out to tell you about. And what was my most recent one? Let's see. It was just the most recent episode. Oh, marriage isn't supposed to be that hard. So that one interrogates the idea that marriage is just so hard. It's so hard. It takes so much work. It's so hard. It's so hard. And who thinks like that? And in what other areas and why, etc. So great episode, if I do say so myself. And I have to say so myself because nobody else is on the show or talking to me. So, okay, defensiveness. Let's get back to that. So I have other episodes about why defensiveness and being difficult and being rigid are turnoffs to women. But this one in particular, defensiveness it's huge. So what does defensiveness mean to a woman? It means that you cannot own that you did something wrong or bad or less than perfect. It means that you switch the frame from that you did something to that you only did it because they did something first. It means that you are lying. You're not really being honest. You're not doing the work to think about how you contributed to a problem, and you are being intellectually and emotionally lazy and just switching it back on them, turning it around, and avoiding the deeper work of being vulnerable, which is hard, which is uncomfortable, and you're really not owning your shit. And so it's very strong, and strength is appealing, to own your own shit, And if you've ever had a boss that minimizes their contribution to a problem and a boss that owns when they did something wrong, then you can tell. If you feel vulnerable around somebody and they show that they're trustworthy by being able to think objectively about themselves, you really like that person and you trust that person. But if you feel vulnerable around somebody like a boss, so for many men, that's the person they feel vulnerable around in the outer world, is a boss. They're in charge of your money, your compensation, and if you stay employed. And if that person lies and they say that they gave you a different deadline than they did, or they actually gave you an assignment that was not correct, but then you do it wrong and they blame you instead of owning their part, that's not somebody that you trust. And women feel vulnerable around their husbands a lot. I mean, that's evolutionary. You're bigger, And so you're bigger, you're stronger, you get louder. When you're angry, it feels more aggressive, more personally threatening. That just is the truth, And I'm not saying, of course, that women can be angry and aggressive and scary and frightening. They can. And mothers can to children. Obviously, a child is smaller than their mother. And they can to men, and they can be physically abusive and verbally abusive and all terrible things. But on average, when is somebody going to be scared of somebody else? When they're bigger, stronger, louder. And so a woman feels vulnerable around an angry man in a very primitive, evolutionarily mediated way. And when men get defensive, they get louder. They're trying to make something up. They're trying to make up a story, so they get dramatic. So I'll give you an example, right? So a woman says to her husband, you were late picking up our kid, right, from school. And instead of saying, yeah, I'm sorry, like I lost track of time, the guy doesn't want to be wrong. So he says, well, maybe I shouldn't even be picking him up because I make more money here. My job is more important. And, what were you doing? That was so important, right? And this is real. This is the way that people react when they're defensive. And I've heard many versions of this where the guy, he's what I call the Mr. Perfect and his crazy wife dynamic. And you can see that podcast and that it's in my book too, 7 Couples You Meet in Counseling. And he just can't stand being wrong. So he turns it on her for being wronger somehow. And in this situation, of course, it wouldn't work unless they were in that sort of dynamic, because if he was just napping, then it wouldn't seem like he could say that. But as long as he feels he's right in some larger way of making more money or being more important, then he can say it. But there are guys who even say it when they're napping. They say, well, I didn't know. You didn't put it on my calendar. You didn't this, you didn't that. Or they say, well, I was there. And then the woman has to turn into Inspector Gadget and look at, the Life 360 app and ask the kid again and like all this stuff and ask the teacher. And this is when people get in this prosecutor role because they feel gaslit by somebody who's lying. Because the defensiveness, honestly, it has to involve some form of lying, because you are defending a position and you're feeling very dysregulated when you're defending it because you feel it's unfair that you should even have to, do this defense, and you feel shame. So the guy that forgets to pick up his kid on time does feel shame. And instead of owning that and saying, I'm sorry, I do lose track of time a lot. I did here too, because that's usually the case. People that lose track of time lose track of time, like in general. So often people with ADHD struggle with defensiveness because they're always forgetting shit, and nobody wants to be that person. That feels very bad. So you don't want to be like, here I go again, and I can't count on myself to pick up my kid on time. Although, of course, ironically, if you admitted that, then you could start to put some systems into place to make sure that there's a lower likelihood of that. But if you're defensive and you're pretending it doesn't happen, then you can't, right? But anyway, nobody wants to be that person. Or if you are, another really common one with this is the guy's not friendly, like to her family or to the kids or to a friend that's over or what have you, because he's depressed, irritable, anxious, what have you. And she says, you weren't being friendly to my friends or to whoever, it hurt my feelings when you were disengaged during the family visit or at the pumpkin patch or whatever. And he's like, well, I didn't even want to go to that. And you shouldn't have even invited so-and-so. And this isn't how I want to spend my time. So instead of owning, yes, I struggle with social anxiety, or I was irritable, or I was feeling depressed, or what have you, instead it's her fault. And so why does this stop sex, right? So a guy would be like, okay, fine. I listened to now 8 minutes of this. And what does this have to do with her sex drive? Well, it goes back to what I said about the man being scary when he's angry, when he's aggressive. And defensiveness always feels unsafe, aggressive, and dishonest. for the reasons that I've explained. And then it does not feel like this is a safe person to be vulnerable with, because he's not being vulnerable himself. He has a very strong guard up. And so that makes the woman feel like she's sleeping with the enemy, literally, and that he is not on her side. He's on the side of himself, and he's on the side of being right, but he is not able to truly open up and be vulnerable, and then she can't. It's almost like instant, a guard goes up physically, sexually, and emotionally. It doesn't matter what her sex drive was. She could be ovulating and you could ruin it, because she could be so into you physically, and you could ruin it with this, because no woman that's healthy wants to sleep with a man that feels unsafe. It feels like the opposite of what you should be doing. It feels like you're doing something that's against your own self-interest. It feels counter to normal. Like it feels counter to healthy. It feels like you're hurting yourself. So it feels self-harming almost, to put yourself, so you've already assessed that somebody's not safe. And then you're going to put yourself at your most vulnerable. You're going to get naked. You're going to have an orgasm. You're going to try to relax. Remember, I've instructed you so many times that for a woman, she needs to be relaxed to have sex. A lot of men relax by having sex, but women need to be relaxed. You need to be relaxed to have an orgasm, as a woman especially. And so what she's saying is, I'm going to put my guard down physically, sexually, emotionally with somebody who has his guard up. That seems stupid. It would be like you go to a fight, the other guy has a gun, and you decide to give him your gun. Why not? You'll just show up completely vulnerable. Now he'll have two guns. That doesn't sound stupid, because it is stupid, right? So the woman shuts off because she feels unsafe. And this is, you couldn't have never touched her, of course. And many guys I would never hurt my wife. All the guys who say I would never hurt my wife, they usually mean, not all, but usually they mean physically. I've never physically harmed my wife, and I never would. That's great. Also, emotionally matters, So if you're always... If your go-to response when she says she's hurt is to say why it's basically okay that she's hurt because she deserves it because she made you hurt her, then again, she feels that you are lying, she feels that you are disingenuous, and she feels you're unsafe. And also, as I've said, there's these physiological triggers, like generally when people are lying, they're acting. So then they get dramatic and they get loud. The louder somebody is, the more they're probably lying, I mean, it's like being in a Shakespearean play and trying to say, some scene, you're trying to tell everybody that you did this thing and you're orating. It's fake, it's acting. So the more you're acting, the more dramatic you are going to sound, which usually means louder and more aggressive. And so then the woman is going to feel less safe physiologically, she feels less safe emotionally, and she just cannot bring herself to have sex with you. So why do people act defensive? Because you saw it growing up, 100%. People do not come up with things out of nowhere. So you probably had a parent that could never admit they were wrong, and now it's really hard for you to admit you were wrong. And in the culture of your home, nobody owns anything. So many people, especially guys like this, I'm like, oh, did you ever hear an apology from your parents? And they laugh. They're like, what? No, of course not. How, why? Maybe if they stepped on my foot, but they would never own having hurt me or having ever made a mistake or having done anything wrong, So then if you grow up like that, it is obvious that you would struggle with being defensive in the same way. But remember, you didn't like that. Even if that was the only home you knew, still, you could imagine it might have gone better for you if you had a parent who was emotionally healthy enough to own their own shit and to apologize, even periodically, or ever, And that could have helped model for you the health of an ecosystem is related to the ability of the partners to own their own shit. You can't have a healthy marriage where people are lying to each other constantly about being perfect, and both of them are trying to act like they're perfect all the time, because they're not, because they're just people. So if you have an ecosystem where a person never says that they're even like angry or tired or irritable, or that they just weren't acting at their best or anything, then how could it be an honest system? That family system is unhealthy. And the children in that system learn that admitting weakness is akin to death, because their parents are terrified to do it. So obviously it must be terrible, or in a worst case scenario, they actually think that their parents were never wrong, that that's why their parents never apologized. And then they grow into similar narcissists that say, oh, basically nobody in this family is ever wrong ever, including them, including me. And why would I ever apologize? Because I'm never, ever wrong. And it's really, really hard to deal with somebody like that in a marriage. And while a woman, especially if she has her own troubles and her own childhood trauma, may be originally attracted to somebody that's self-absorbed because it seems safe and stable. This person, he has enough ego for the both of us, pretty much. Over time, she's not going to like it. And that turns into the narcissist borderline dynamic. And then she's always kind of trying to get him to admit that he was wrong about something so that she doesn't always have to be the crazy one. And this still goes right back into my Mr. Perfect and his crazy wife dynamic. And I'll link that podcast so you could listen to it. But the point is if you struggle with defensiveness, you should probably try to work on it in therapy. You should probably come in. Couples work can be really good for this. Individual work can be good for this as well. Point being, if she doesn't sleep with you and she has called you defensive, then here's why. It doesn't make any sense for her to sleep with you if she thinks you're defensive. This is like a positive outcome interpersonally, like internally, for her own mental health. If she continues to sleep with somebody who she perceives as unsafe, you're not going to want that outcome over time. Over time, she's going to begin to hate you and resent you. So you definitely don't want that. So if you do have any desire to work on your relationship and your wife has said that you're defensive, then now you have a deeper understanding of the origin of that, how it may be impacting her psychologically, and why to work on it. All right. I hope you guys understood, what I was saying and got something from it. And I hope that if you do struggle with this, that you understand that it is not like you're a terrible person. It is that you saw this modeled for you. And before you keep on kicking that can down the road intergenerationally and just making sure that your kids struggle with defensiveness as well, you could use it as a wake-up call listening to this and say, you know what, that does sound like me, unfortunately. That does sound like our dynamic, and I do want to work on it. And I will talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.